Did you know, in the last 60 years, the number of jobs requiring an occupational license has grown from about 1 in 20 to nearly 1 in 4. Occupational licensing can help protect the health and safety of consumers by requiring practitioners to undergo training and education in their field. However, differences in regulations between states can also create barriers to employment for many Americans. 34% of working active duty military spouses are trained in professions requiring state licenses or certification, compared to 30% of the civilian population. Military spouses are 7 times more likely to have moved across state lines in the last year than other civilians who routinely lose 6 to 9 months of income. Immigrants represent 17% of the U.S. civilian workforce. In healthcare, for example, they make up 28% of U.S. physicians, 24% of dentists, and 38% of home health aides. However, licensing requirements for immigrants with work authorizations often make it difficult for them to work in their fields of expertise. Of the 7.4 million college-educated immigrants in the U.S. labor force, 1 in 4 are working below their skill level. This equates to a loss of $39 billion in foregone earnings, as well as $10 billion in foregone taxes in the U.S. each year. It is estimated that 77 million Americans, or 1 in 3 adults, have a criminal record. There are over 15,000 provisions across the U.S. limiting occupational licensing for those with a prior criminal record. Of these provisions, 8,000 restrictions apply to those with felony charges, and 4,000 apply to those with misdemeanor charges. Additionally, there are 25 states and the District of Columbia with blanket bans that do not use standards on relevancy of conviction with the licenses being sought. For low-income, unemployed, and dislocated workers, occupational licensing can be burdensome. On average, becoming a licensed worker takes 12 months of education or training, plus additional costs for licensing fees. These populations might not have flexibility in their schedule or budget to train while working elsewhere or seeking employment. Portability of licenses across states can limit wage growth and employment rates in licensed occupations by restricting geographic mobility. Mobility barriers may also prevent workers from matching with the jobs best suited to their skills.
Professions, occupations vary in scope, and they vary in education requirements and examination requirements.
So often the licensing requirements are based on checking boxes. Have you taken a certain number of hours or classes? And what we really should be asking is, do you have the skills necessary to provide this service? And if a person has those skills, they should be allowed to work.
Funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration, the National Conference of State Legislatures, in partner with the Council of State Governments and the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices, embarked on a project to identify solutions and best practices for occupational licensing. The project provides states with individualized technical assistance and opportunities to share work with other states. Through a competitive application process, 11 states were selected to participate in the Consortium in 2017. Through additional funding, 5 more states were added in 2018. Each state was tasked with assembling a core team, comprised of legislators, governor's office staff, and regulatory agency officials to steer their state throughout the project. This consortium hosted annual meetings for policymakers and regulators, allowing for sharing of licensing policies and approaches.
The first consortium meeting was a great meeting. It really was a collaborative meeting, and we really were able to develop an action plan with the facilitation of NCSL.
As part of the consortium, we had opportunities on an annual basis to get together with participants from other states that are working on similar issues and share ideas, share successes, and share challenges that we're facing.
You can't get into this and just feel your way around. You have to have a vision as to what you feel as a state the most important things are that you want to focus on, and then attack those wholeheartedly. We're dealing with the same problems all over the place. Red states, blue states, southern states, northern states, west coast, east coast, it doesn't matter. Outside of politics and outside of partisanship, there seems to be a unifying effort to try to really take a hard look and make sure that what we're doing is not adding to the problem.
Both sides of the aisle feel like it's important for workers to have the opportunity and the right to go and earn a living with the skills that they have.
The primary goals of the project were to reduce barriers to labor market entry caused by occupational licensing and increase cross-state portability.
It was really helpful to identify the populations that we wanted to streamline for.
We received an inventory of our occupational licenses and juxtapose against those licenses around the country. So we've had an opportunity to look at how we stack up with other licenses as we think about our program in a fair and balanced approach.
We identified fields like cosmetology, HVAC, and electricians, and we set out with a series of bills to provide some type of a guidance to them.
The consortium helped us focus on specific ideas such as military and veterans issues or military family issues.
We developed different committees, including for the immigrant population, the rehabilitated workforce.
We talked to a lot of people who had come out of prison. We talked to a lot of employers so that we could identify areas where there were barriers.
Portability in terms of licensing is important to the consumer as well as to small businesses across the country. Mobility allows consumers and small businesses to really find the best person to fit their needs.
Most recently, we were able to champion a bill that will allow for portability and allow people licensed in other states to come in more easily, called the Occupational Credentialing Portability Act.
In Utah, it's now possible for an active duty military member who's assigned here, when they bring with them a spouse or a family member dependent, they can immediately start working on whatever license or permits they have from another state.
We really have a much more active conversation now than we had previously. We're able to speak in a more articulate manner about the goals of Vermont. We also are really focused on apprenticeships, bridge licensing. So through reduction of barriers for entry, creative partnerships, and looking at the apprenticeship track with fresh eyes, we really have been able to start to tackle workforce development issues, but we still have a long way to go.
The 16 states that participated in the consortium saw a 20% higher legislation enactment rate than non-consortium states. Though only 16 states have received the direct technical assistance and facilitation from the partners, other states have taken advantage of the lessons learned. Future funding would allow for expansion to additional states.
Based upon our involvement with the consortium and seeing the various different best practices from the other states, we've really kind of taken a multifaceted approach to some of these things. Because of that, we've had 3 or 4 different boards now that have voluntarily associated with the Department of Professional Licensing through many of these things that we've learned at the consortium.
The biggest advantage has been having the conversation around removing barriers to licensure. It's a topic in every state. Even states that aren't part of the consortium are doing things that are positive in this area. So I feel now that there's a network of people that I can call all across the country and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Have you done it? What was your experience? And I would just really like to continue those conversations.
The consortium really was a great place to bring lots of states together, even when regulation varies pretty significantly state to state. And so from a very large perspective, we're still leveraging those relationships, and I think the work will continue in a much more directed and focused way.
Some of my priorities moving forward will be to continue our work on competency-based licensing, competency-based education, and also a better treatment for folks coming to our state from other states and from other countries. We want people who are coming to our state to feel welcome. We want them to be able to do their jobs and be able to be successful, productive members of our society.
We're getting new data that is helping us to analyze occupational licensing. I think that's generating more interest in the potential policy solutions as we're able to say more about the evidence that pertains to them.
I think it's going to be important for us to grow this group. We can't get content with the number of states that we have that are a part of it right now. We should constantly be moving to bring in new states into the fold so that we can continue to spread this idea of a strong economy for all. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to fix this overnight or in a week's time or in a month. This is going to take a collective effort over years, generations, but it's worth it and it's necessary.